I don't care if it costs me an election. I will stand here and tell you right now, exposing your children and taking them to drag shows and exposing them to transgender sexual performances is wrong, and it shouldn't happen, and it should be illegal. Welcome, everybody, to the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Of course, I'm your host, Andrew Cooperrider, and I welcome you guys so much onto watching us today. We've got some important topics to cover. It seems the Amendment 2 lies abound. There's been a recent ad campaign started up by the crazed left in Kentucky, and their ad is full of lies. It doesn't cover at all about what the amendment does or doesn't do. Additionally, as well, we're going to be talking about their having a pride at the Capitol. On the old lawn, having their Pride Festival, including drag shows for kids. And we're going to be talking about that and talk about how do we address these issues and the decay of society. Because after all, that's really what it is. When you're exposing yourself sexually to children, that is the decay of society at that point. And anybody who would somehow protect this is quite literally a horrible person. That's all I can say. But before we dig into that, guys, please like, comment, share, subscribe, join in on our conversations. You can comment, follow the show, listen along, and let's go ahead and dig into it. Oh, make sure you visit c4ky.com as well. c4ky.com as well. To check out the website there for the campaign, and let's dig into it. So Amendment 2 lies. So a few weeks ago, I did a episode where I focused on what the amendments do or don't do. And what we've seen recently is an ad from those people that would have you believe this amendment does a whole lot more than what it does. So first, let me play the ad, and then we'll go ahead and break it down here.
Everyone hopes for a healthy pregnancy and baby. That wasn't my story. We had multiple tests and doctor visits. We wanted this baby, but both me and the baby were at risk. Amendment 2 means no abortions, no exceptions. Kentucky politicians don't understand their mandate will put women's lives in danger. It's an impossible decision. I can't imagine a politician making it for me. Amendment 2 goes too far. Please, for our family and yours, vote no.
Okay, so we covered that was a ad absolutely replete with ridiculous, crazy, and out of control conjecture and lies. Let me tell you this. What Amendment 2 does, it doesn't change where things are right now. It doesn't do really anything when it comes to actual current abortion law. I mean, you had a woman sitting there talking about no exemptions, no whatever. The amendment doesn't even talk about that. All it says is it's affirming something that most people, and I think most judges, believe to be true right now. Amendment 2 is mainly about two things. One, to say that you do not have an innate right to an abortion in our laws. What does that mean? Now, let's say you're somebody who believes people should be allowed to have abortions before 15 weeks. Let's say you're one of those individuals. I may disagree with you, but let's say you're one of those individuals, and that's what you believe. That's okay. That's fine that you believe that for you. It's not okay for me. I don't believe that, and I stand against it. But what this amendment does is it doesn't mean that those legislature having the debate about where abortion or life begins or what exceptions need to be had a debate. Once again, I believe life begins at conception, but, once again, let's say you want to have that debate about when those are allowed. Well, you can have that debate in the legislature and when you make laws and how you elect people. What Amendment 2 does is it keeps it with the legislature. As we covered a few weeks ago, it doesn't outlaw anything. Today, first off, Kentucky abortions are primarily stopped, except for exemptions when the mother's life is in danger of rape or incest. Those are the exemptions that we have in Kentucky today. And if you're somebody who says, I agree with those exemptions, Amendment 2 doesn't change that. All Amendment 2 does is it leaves the ability to make law to the legislature. All it states is that, one, there's no right to an abortion in our Constitution. Because if you're somebody who believes life doesn't begin at conception, not me, but if you're somebody who believes that, surely you must believe there's a cutoff point at some point. See, it's intellectually easy for me to say life begins at conception because I don't have to sit here and argue back and forth about where does life begin and how do you draw that line. But let's say you're somebody who wants to draw a line. Now, most 99.99% of people outside the very extreme leftists, and unfortunately, that is who's dominating this issue, outside of them, they believe that you shouldn't be able to abort a baby 5 minutes before birth, a month before birth, a lot of them, 2 months before birth, a lot of them. And so you agree that there's some point. Well, if a rogue judge does what they did in Roe v. Wade and reads into the Constitution, our state constitution, a right that does not exist currently, that you have a right to an abortion, what that means is that it can turn around and say, well, it looks to me like I can't deny you the right to an abortion. You have the right to an abortion, so we can't stop it. The legislature can't make laws to stop a person from aborting a baby a day before it's about to be born. And so it's to put in place a guaranteed protections to say the legislature can make law. It doesn't change anything from how it is now, but you watch that ad and you would think it's going to be a Handmaid's Tale out here. If this amendment passes, we're going to be walking in the streets and everyone's a forced pregnancy and blah, 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 blah. Oh my gosh, women are going to be forced to die giving birth. If Amendment 2 passes, the world shall end. That's what they're yelling from the rooftops. But yet, that's not the truth. Nothing changes. The only thing that changes when Amendment 2 passes is, one, it's going to save you tax dollars because you don't have to worry about cases like what we have now going on in the courts, trying to argue that there's some right somewhere, even though it was never passed. We never voted on it and no legislator ever made it, but there's somehow some right to an abortion somewhere. That's the first thing. Second thing it does is it ensures that our tax dollars don't fund abortions either. Because that is one thing I'm sure we could all agree on, is you don't want your tax dollars funding things you disagree with. And generally over the course of time, we've all agreed that when an issue's an issue worth that we're going to fight over or something like that, it's an issue that people have difference of opinions on, whether that's religious or abortion or something else, that the thing they're not going to do, they won't spend taxpayer dollars on putting in place things you disagree with. An example of this would be, it's to affirm, for an example, I'm a big 2A person, maybe you're against the Second Amendment. But if you're against the Second Amendment, you'd have to agree that your tax dollars shouldn't buy me guns. Now, one could make an argument. No, I'm just joking. But you would have to agree that your tax dollars shouldn't buy me guns. I agree with you. And so what we have to say is our tax funds don't fund things we disagree with. Now, a lot of people out there are also trying to convince some of the more liberty-esque people that somehow this is government overreach, that coming in and saying that, hey, you can't murder a child is somehow government overreach, and I disagree with you wholeheartedly. I do not think, one, you can't let people control that conversation because this isn't about what the role of government is. That's not the argument. We both agree government shouldn't let people murder people. We both agree on that. We both agree that those are protections that the government provides, is that in law and order in the case of not being murdered. But what we see instead is individuals out here, and what we see instead, is individuals out here trying to claim that if you believe in not having abortions legal, that you're somehow for bigger government. That's not the case. It's not a disagreement over the size of government. It's a disagreement over where life begins. But when you're watching those ads, and I've been seeing them a lot, I'm sure you will be too, be sure to tell your friends and family, this is lies. They're making things up. This is not the Second Amendment that we're going to be voting on our ballot does. What the second, what Proposal 2, Amendment 2 does, is all it does is it says there's no right to an abortion in our Constitution. and there's no right to have it paid for by the taxpayer funds, to stop these liberal judges from trying to read in and being activists from the bench. Very important. So, what do we got next? We got wonderful Pride event going on up in Frankfurt on the old Capitol lawn. Capitol Pride presents. You got drag shows, vendor fairs, kids activities, entertainment, food, and beer. Now look, your choices are your choices, right? I can see there is a difference here, and this is a nuance, not really a nuance. This is something the left purposefully misunderstands. While I may personally disagree with some of your life choices, I do not believe in using the power of government to force my views on you. However, I do believe that we do need to protect our youth. And when we're recognizing something as what it is, child abuse, we need to stand against it. And as I see here, drag shows, vendor fair, kids activities. Drag shows are adult entertainment. It is. Not something I'm into, but maybe it's something you're into. And if you want to go watch that with your friends down at the strip club or in an adult only, checking the ideas at the doors type bar type situation, then so be it. You go and you do that. But bring your kids around it. Those are sexual performances. They're men dressing up like burlesque type women. That's what's going on. You may say, well, they're not getting fully naked. No, but they're wearing they're a man wearing scant women clothing, gyrating around to music and dancing and doing a performance that is sexual in nature. That is what they are doing. And exposing that to children is wrong. It's wrong. It's incorrect. It's immoral. But what can we do legally here? Because I think we're getting to a point where we have a lot of, this goes back into, well, my tax dollars should at least not fund it. We're having these drag queen story hours. Kelly Paul famously in her Fancy Farm speech mentioned it best when she said that, the Democrats used to promise a chicken in every pot. Now they promise a drag queen in every school. And we're seeing this more and more where we've got drag performances and shows and places with kids, cross-dressing with kids. And this is what we have to accept. We have to say, look, this is a bad moral thing. It is. Let's venture down a road for a second. Okay. Let's venture down a road and let's pretend that you believe that men can be born as women and they change their gender and everything else. You would have to agree that that's a pretty intense thing. I mean, after all, they're committing suicide at higher rates and higher rates, extremely high rates, and have a lot of mental issues as far as that goes. So you'd have to agree that that's the case. But let's believe you believe that's the way. And you think, hey, we should be nice and honest with transgender people. I'm with you there. I understand that. There's no reason to be necessarily out of your way mean to anybody. But at the same time, we have to agree that if you're a sane person, you want your child to turn out not having to believe, going through the mental health issues that come along with believing you're a different gender. If you loved your child and you care more about your child than you do getting yourself attention, or you bother or virtue signaling with your children, then you would, for a second, pause and say, if I had the ability to choose, I wouldn't want my child being transgender, believing they're a different gender, because that's just simply unhealthy. It is definitionally unhealthy, right? We should all be able to agree. Now, we can disagree on our treatments. You may believe that means if a person believes they're a different gender, that they should go through gender reassignment. We should all buy in or whatever. But we should all agree that it is not an ideal situation for somebody to hate the body they're born in. We should at least be able to agree with that. And showing your children and exposing them to these ideas is causing more and more upset children. And that's obvious. It's a contagion. It's a social contagion. It's very obvious. And it's a social contagion that is deadly because it comes with very high suicidality rates. And so exposing your children to it, pretty rough. It's also clearly, like I said, it's sexual in nature. That is why I will be pushing. I've already begun to talk to some legislators about this and talking with some different groups to get legislation in place to classify drag shows for what they are. We need to classify drag shows for what they are: adult entertainment that shouldn't be shown to children. And doing so should be punishable by law. The same as taking a kid into a strip club. The same as taking a child around. I want to take my child to like even a Hooters. I know some people do. You shouldn't. And they're not even clad in well, it's kind of sexualized clothing, obviously. But what we're talking about here is innate. These are sexual performances, and we see inappropriate things constantly at these shows. I mean, I've seen the videos, you've seen the videos, inappropriate things, and I will stand here. I don't care if it costs me an election. I will stand here and tell you right now, exposing your children and taking them to drag shows and exposing them to transgender sexual performances is wrong, and it shouldn't happen, and it should be illegal. It should be illegal now. We should be able to make the case now, but we need to clear that up. That's why I'll be fighting for a bill to get passed to classify drag shows as what they are: adult entertainment, and to be regulated as such. Same way we regulate pornography and strip clubs and all those other adult entertainment, this should be done with as well. But what's more concerning, I guess not more concerning, what is concerning to me, so let's take away the drag shows. Let's just look at this event then, this Pride event. Talking about, in general, these Pride events, right? It's this weird fascination people have with who they bang. I mean, that's really what it is. It's a weird fascination the left has with who you're messing around with. And we have to recognize that throwing a party for who you go to bed with at night is weird. It is weird. What's even stranger is when we look at who the sponsors are. Here's the sponsors for this event. Tribon Properties. Look, if you're doing business with them, I want it, but okay. But look at this. We got Bridgeport Christian Church. Now, everybody look at that logo there. What do we see? We see a transgender, black, brown, the new pride flag, chalice representing, of course, the Jesus's chalice that he passed around his blood in. And we see that cup there, overput with the cross and the gay pride flag. Oh, the new one, the ugly one. Well, not, the other one was, But this new one with the brown and the black stripes, and that's so ugly. I'm going to say it's an ugly flag. We got church here, but you think that's the only church? You're wrong. Here's another church we got. First Christian Church. Been around since 1847, that church in Lawrenceburg, Kentucky. Sponsoring drag shows for kids. South Frankfort Presbyterian Church. Right there next to Planned Parenthood. If you're a church and you're sponsoring the same event as Planned Parenthood, you're doing the wrong thing. I'm sorry, but if you find yourself sponsoring an event where we're showing drag shows to kids and Planned Parenthood is getting in on the action, and you're going to sit there and call yourself a Christian organization, you're wrong. That's wrong. Anybody wants to argue with me about it? How dare you think you're smarter than thousands of years of history? Literally, for thousands of years, Christians have believed homosexually wrong. Transgender, wrong. Sexualizing children, wrong. I'm not saying along the line there has been slip-ups or whatever, but the point is we've always held it as wrong. We want to go out and sponsor it and pay for it. But yet, what do we see out of these supposed Christian organizations, these churches? This is the decay of society right here. This is the decay of our morals. We wonder why everybody's killing themselves and mental health issues continue and stronger and continue because we have no moral society anymore. We have no moral fabric. What we have instead is social rot and decay. All you got to do is look at the results. People are unhappy at higher rates. People are killing themselves at higher rates. Our mental health awareness has grown, but yet mental health issues abound. Another organization on that list is the Kentucky Elks Association. Who's the Kentucky Elks? Well, let's read their mission. To push the principles of charity, justice, brotherly love, and fidelity. I guess brotherly love means something different over there at the Elks now these days. Out there sponsoring pride festivals, I guess for them, and drag shows for kids. I guess for them, brotherly love means something a little bit different than the Christian meaning. And fidelity. Nothing screams fidelity like a pride parade and drag shows celebrating who you're banging at night and all the different people. Because fidelity means faithfulness to a person or a belief or loyalty and support. Something that I don't think people who put on pride festivals are particularly well known for. After all, as we were looking at the monkeypox spreading, it was mainly spreading at pride events because of the orgies they were having. And yet, with the Elks, let's continue to recognize a belief in God, to promote the welfare and enhancement of the happiness of its members. Once again, I ask you, Kentucky Elks, how is continuing to sponsor and push things like transing the kids, pushing out happiness when we see the result is death? To quicken the spirit of American patriotism, to cultivate good fellowship, to perpetuate itself as a fraternal organization, and to provide for its government, the benevolent and the protective order of the Elks of the United States of America will serve the people and communities through benevolent programs demonstrating the Elks care and Elks share. Elks Lodges bring so much more to their communities than just a building, golf course, or pool. They are places where neighbors come together, families share meals, and children grow up while watching men dressed like scantily clad women and gyrating their crotches around the kid's face. Oh, I'm sorry, that wasn't a part of it. I was just pulling that meaning out from it because that is where their money is going towards. Elks invest in their communities through programs that help children grow up healthy and drug-free by undertaking projects that address unmet need and honoring the service and sacrifice of our veterans. Wow, that sounds like a great organization, except for the fact that they've decided to jump on board with Planned Parenthood to sponsor a pride festival that includes drag shows for the kids to watch along and join with. You guys think these stuff doesn't happen in Kentucky? I hear that all the time. We talk about California, Canada. Well, those things are happening here. They're not coming here. They are coming here. And we have to stand strong in the way. And we can do that through a few different ways. One, when something makes sense, when we look at something and say, that's not government overreach. Something like protecting children from sexual abuse. That's not government overreach. That's an enforcement of a contract, in my opinion, because you have an unspoken contract when you have children to take care of them and raise them properly. A contract you willingly engaged into when you decided to have sex. And governments are instituted among men to help enforce these contracts. And that is a contract that we accept and codify into law. We need to recodify that down and make sure that we classify here in Kentucky once and for all that these drag shows, they are nothing more than adult sexual entertainment that children should be nowhere near. Well, I thank you guys for joining me for this episode of the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Once again, I will be pushing on this law heavy this next year. Hopefully you join me in talking to your legislators about it. Let's get it passed. We need to protect our children, and we need to get everything. We need to make sure we're not just throwing them to the wolves. These fights are important. I'm a father. I don't see my kid growing up in this kind of world where I got to worry about when I walk through the old Capitol. What is my son gonna see? Is he gonna see a dude dressed like a prostitute? We shouldn't have to worry about that. Once again, guys, thank you for joining me so much. Please share this out. Check out the campaign at c4ky.com. Thank you so much for joining me, and have